Hello, this is Andrew Farova, and welcome back to part 2 of our Meet Your Teacher series interview with Dr. Abigail Pack. Let's jump right back in. Do you follow the same curriculum for every student? Why or why not?
No, I do not. There are some generalities that I will follow, such as everybody needs to be able to expand their range, and everybody needs to be able to multiple tongue, and everybody needs to know stopped horn, the essentials, but there is no fixed curriculum. In other words, if somebody needs to work on stopped horn, they can do a different piece from everybody else, or we can write some new ones or something like that. So I find out primarily, first and foremost, what is your dream job? Do you want to be an orchestral player, or do you want to be a middle school band director? And that changes the focus of the curriculum in many ways to me. If you want to play fourth horn in the New York Phil,
or be an art teacher,
exactly, your curriculum's going to look a lot different than perhaps another student in the horn studio. But the fundamentals or the essentials, everybody needs to know stopped horn, but maybe you don't need to play the Rimsky-Korsakov excerpt for your stopped horn demonstration. Maybe just playing some triads. It just depends. It depends. And that's why, because everybody has a different dream job and career goal. So I think that they're more independent studies to me. Each student has their own independent study. That's how I look at teaching horn lessons.
What is your take on equipment? Are you the kind of teacher that if a student comes in with a horn you don't like, you just throw it at the wall or smash it on the ground? Are you not that kind of person? And if you do feel that a student needs a new horn, what does the process look like?
So one thing, I think I should have said this before, like, what would your students say about you? I think they would maybe say, you love analogies. I love analogies. I love teaching through analogies. And just for the record, Andrew raised his hand, so I think he loves analogies too.
Yes, I do.
So one really good analogy for equipment is the automobile or the shoe, and I'll explain. So I think that equipment, like the car that you buy and the shoes that you put on, for example, are very individualized, and you have to figure out what it is that what does your body need? Are you 6'4"? You're going to need maybe a different car than somebody who's 4'9", perhaps. You're going to be looking for different things. Are you driving in the mountains? Are you driving, on flat surfaces? Do you need a towing capacity? You get the idea. So I think, first of all, I acknowledge that it's a very unique, individualized experience, and it has to be something comfortable, like the shoe. That's where the shoe comes in. I've got a high end step. I got to have a good shoe. So everybody shows up with a car and some shoes. So I have to see what they have first. Is it something that they've outgrown, or can they get some more mileage out of it? Is it holding them back? What is their budget? So I really think that it's a case by case basis. I don't hate any horn. There are a few that I certainly don't care for more than others, but really, if you're going to an audition and you sound amazing on a $2,000 horn, then who cares what kind of equipment is, and then you can worry about getting the really fancy $15,000 horn, let's say, after you win the big job and are making money. Perhaps if you have equipment that's really holding you back, then I have very candid conversations. I never tell students what to buy. I tell them some considerations, like, oh, you have a very bright, inherently bright sound. You might want to look for a darker color. Let's consider these alloys, or maybe this mouthpiece, or something like that. But all very in generalities. And then I insist that they go to as many conferences as possible, and they try even the stuff they don't like. Because you never know. You never know what's going to just suddenly be that aha moment. And you pick up the right combination of equipment, and it's amazing. Go play for everybody. Play on stage. Play in a dead practice room. Play outside. Play with other people to see how you blend. I mean, these are all, again, I think experiences I've had where I've bought things and I thought it was, the answer to my prayers. And then I played in a section. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to sell this. This is terrible. I think every professional horn player at some time goes through some stuff. And so young people that haven't had those experiences, generally, I want to try to fix the player before I fix the equipment. If the equipment isn't terrible, like noisy valves, that's kind of something I think it's like being a race car driver or something like that. And it doesn't have enough gears or it has this or that. Like you've got to have some basics, like the noise, the valves shouldn't be noisy. You shouldn't have soldering loose. Like the structure of the instrument needs to be intact. And then it really shouldn't hold you back. If it doesn't play well in your problematic range or the register that you need to work in, then maybe you should consider getting something that will help your weak spot. But I always also will play the instrument to see if it's them or the horn. And so I will play their stuff. And what I have found is the majority, it's the student that needs to get better. And they can save their money until they go off to grad school where they're becoming a more professional player. And I guess I'm speaking about the incoming students. Grad students almost always already have good stuff because they've had somebody to work with. Unless they're just, poor grad students like I was, and they have what they have and they're going to do the best they can until they can save up for a more professional line horn. So I don't think there's an easy answer. Not for me. I don't say everybody has to have a guy or everybody has to have this. I don't have those sorts of policies in my studio.
Yeah, for what it's worth, my parents bought me my first horn when I was going into 10th grade, and I played that horn all the way through my undergrad and through 3/4 of my master's before I finally got a different instrument. I was about to ask. Yeah, so you had a similar experience.
Me too. I went to a conference, Southeast, and I found one, honestly, that looked really cool. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I didn't know. It was in my parents' price point. I thought I sounded like an amazing player on this thing. And it was the Yamaha 868, but they don't even make anymore. They don't make anymore. And I played it. I had that thing for every bit of 20 years. I mean, wow. I bought and sold other things, but always kept it as a backup because I knew it was like, I won some jobs on it. Like it was a great horn. I finally outgrew it, but yeah, I mean, I needed to look in the mirror and fix me before I start worrying about the $10,000 instrument. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have a teacher that can help you see that for sure.
Yeah, right.
So what are your thoughts on transposing? I think if you polled a large group of people, you'd get some that would say, hey, we should all just read off F parts. This whole transposition thing is dumb. Other people would strongly disagree. Which camp are you in?
I'm definitely in the transposition camp. I do not play in, a metropolitan orchestra, or I don't know what you, Andrew, and the Charlotte Symphony have on your stand, or in your folder for concerts that include early music that was not in F. So I can't speak to that. But I can say that it's a skill set that still is extremely valuable in many gig arenas, not just orchestra, but you get hired at a church and they're, oh, well, gosh, we need somebody to play, some hymns. And you already understand the principles of transposition and have the skill set, then you're good. I go so far as to encourage my students to learn bass clef C for the same reason, just because you just have more opportunities, or you have greater success if the opportunity arises where you need to be able to read something. I think it's really important. I require everyone to transpose here. All of the auditions here have transposition. We sight read transposition duets in other keys. Every single lesson, the last 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes we devote to sight reading transposition. And by the end of the undergraduate degree, students usually ask for it and are really disappointed if we run out of time. It's fun. It's a puzzle.
Yeah, we've had so many good answers to that question on the podcast. And I obviously haven't answered that question, but my response would be that I have never regretted knowing how to transpose.
Right. It's not something you're like, gosh, I really wished I hadn't learned that. But
Yeah.
you probably would be way more likely to hear, wow, I really wished I had done that more.
Right. Yeah, and it is very functional.
Yeah.
I it's one of those things that kind of goes by the wayside where it's like once you know how to do it, it's like, it's not like quite as special anymore. In terms of the way that it's used in professional life. It's when it becomes special is the rare occasion when, for example, you might be in an opera pit and the singer's sick and soprano says, "Can we please do it down a whole step?"
Oh, yeah.
And oh, it feels so good to
Isn't
look
that
around the
great?
pit and be like, yeah,
No
no problem
problem.
at all.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the string players are going berserk.
Yes.
It's those rare little occasions where it's like, and yes, I can do that.
Yep. Yep. I love it. I think it's fun. I could pull out my horn at any point and say, why read it in F? And I've actually gotten in a friendly argument with a colleague of mine over, I'll pitch this to you, the timbral qualities of different transpositions. Like I think horn in E is brighter than horn in E flat.
Different tubing lengths.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
So I think it's fun. I just think that it's really fun. It's just fun. It's entertainment to me.
Yeah, transition. I hate to say it, but it's one of those things. I think if you're on your high horse about not wanting to learn how to do it, yeah. So far, we've got a 100% agreement with
That's
everyone
good.
so far
That's
saying,
good.
look, I think we kind of need to do that.
Yep.
Maybe that's why I asked that question.
Just to
Slightly
affirm your belief
self-serving.
system.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. These next two questions are fun, but I always like to say, please do be honest. Do you regularly attend your students' performances? And do your students often attend your performances?
So this is an interesting question. I attend absolutely every one that I can. If I don't have sickness in our house because I have kids, if I don't have a prior obligation, I mean, concert week here for the large ensembles, we joke in the balcony where when the faculty that show up sit up in the balcony in the same spot, like, I'll see you tomorrow night, for the whatever concert. So yes, I do attend everything that I can unless I have an obligation. I never just not go. I always go. And if I don't go, I'll hear about it and they'll want to know where I am. It's like, it's an expectation, but we have fun with social media. So we always take, right after the concerts, we take studio shots of the horn section. All the studios here do that. There's the trumpet section and there's the oboe section, and we'll throw it all over social media, which is kind of fun. And they love that. They love seeing their teacher there. I wish the flip side were as enthusiastic. Sometimes I have to require them to come to faculty performances. If they know about it and they want to come, but more often there will inevitably be several kids or a few kids at least that will say, I have a work shift. I never give them grief for it. Most of the time, because I know that a lot of kids need work. They have to work to pay their bills. They have to have a job to pay their rent. And I don't want to hold it over their heads that they can't sit in that chair for an hour to hear me play or go make money on a shift that they need to eat. So I require them to come to concerts of each other. That's the requirement. I do not require them to come and hear me play because I don't want to hold that over them. And it makes me feel guilty. I want them to want to be there. Most of them do. Most of them show up. One of my strategies to do that is to share recitals with other people so that it's like rep and music that they've not heard before, or it's fun chamber music, or it's going to be something really cool or whatever. I'll do that a lot, or I'll have a guest come in and play something with me or something like that, I'll try to make it more interesting than just them hearing me play. So that's my experience. I hate requiring them. I want them to want to. I tell them that it's in the syllabus. You're expected to be there. I expect you to come to everything that you can. And when they're not there, I assume, and I'll message them and say, hey, this was a really important concert. I want you to go find the recording and give me, give me some response to what you heard and what you think. And the kids that are really involved in their career and their horn and they really want it to be there, will do it. But the kids that are not as passionate or perhaps, just unfocused or they're doing something else, I don't want to ever assume that they're lazy or not there because they're slackers or not doing what they're supposed to do. I think, and this is a Doug Hillism, I learned. He once said, you have to assume, and I'm paraphrasing, this is not a direct quote at all, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting, but it's a powerful statement, which I still believe to be true. It's good to assume everyone is doing the very best they can in any given moment. And that has been just a stalwart of my philosophy, which would bleed into this example. Like, if they can't be there, I'm assuming that even if it's a mental health thing or if it's, they broke up with their partner, I mean, that's very real to them. And, well, my performance is recorded. So I'll just say, well, it was really important to me for you all to hear this, whatever it was. Go check it out.
I'm glad to hear you give that answer. You're the first person to actually say that maybe my students aren't at everything, which I was really glad to hear you say, because I think back on my experience listening throughout my undergrad, at least. Hearing your answer, it reminds me of what you said about the stars aligning earlier. You said that out loud, and I latched onto it earlier in part one. And for me, the process of getting something out of listening required the stars to align. So I grew up in band land like you did. And as a result, did not fall in love with music because of orchestras or orchestra repertoire or opera repertoire, none of it. What I do for a living now, I could have cared less about through all of high school. And strangely, in terms of listening, also all of my undergrad. Yeah, it took me directly between my undergrad and my master's, starting at a Juilliard, for me to fall in love with listening to music. And it needed one of these stars aligning moments. I had this lecture over and over again from all the powers that be about needing to go listen. I was required to go to concerts, constantly. I never enjoyed them. I would always fall asleep. It meant nothing to me, which is crazy, given that I wanted to actually be who I was watching. But I simply did not love listening. And the stars aligning moment for me was when I met a bunch of my trumpet studio friends at Brevard in my summer between undergrad and my master's. And a bunch of my trumpet studio buddies, they had a way of listening to music. And I remember we would lie on the floor in the brass studio and they would play their favorite recording. I mean, the concept that they would have a favorite recording of anything, that was the first time I had heard of that.
Wow.
Because wait, you would go through the effort of listening to multiple recordings, and why would you have a favorite? It's just all like, that was kind of my perspective. And first off, why are you even listening in the first place? Like, don't you want to be a performer? What does listening have to do with this? It's not interesting. So that was where I was coming from, but it was the way that they would talk about it. Like I got into that, and I started listening to what through the lens of the way they heard it. And I actually had to be taught, quite honestly, and see how someone else listened to it to understand, like, actually, no, this is kind of exciting. And now one of the most exciting things I could possibly do is go to a concert.
Yeah.
And now it almost never happens. It's kind of a shame.
Well, I think that, what you're saying, I think I'm also trying to say a little bit is sometimes I think when you force or require, it loses, it's a requirement. It's just another requirement. And
another hoop to jump
through. And I feel like I don't want them to come and hear me play to hear me play. Why am I performing in the first place? Am I giving a recital because I want everyone to come and hear me play? I don't think that's why I'm playing in the first place. I'm not playing so people can come and hear me play. I'm playing because I'm like, oh my God, listen to this beautiful thing. And I'm going to channel the best I can the composer's intentions, or the beauty of this phrase. Like, listen to how beautiful this phrase is. I'm lucky enough to be the person that gets to maybe deliver a good phrase now and then.
Be that conduit.
To be the conduit, right? But like, I'm not doing it to, you know, I have my people come and hear me. No, it's not. That's not what I'm doing. And I think that's why I enjoy chamber music almost more than solo recitals now, because the collaboration like is so much fun. It's so much fun to play with people. And I feel like there's so much to share. It's like a good friendship on stage. And if people and my students, I hope they want to come. I really want them to want to come. But it's not because I want to force them to sit in a chair and, listen to me play again, or listen to Ab Pack. I want them to come and listen to Brahms, or, whatever the piece is that I keep bringing up Brahms for some reason today. But it's the music that's the important thing. And I think that is such a huge part of performance anyways. That's another rabbit hole to go down. My philosophy of teaching is getting the ego out. Like, it's not about me. Teaching is not about me. Performing is not about me. None of it's about me. It's all about the art form, in my opinion. So I try really hard to make sure that it's always about the thing, not the person, not this person. I'm pointing to myself, not me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm getting memory flashbacks of Richard Dean, again, at the Brevard Music Center, recommending some of these books by Eckhart Tolle about basically this ego and trying to figure out, identify, I guess, the heart of where some of our mental gymnastics are coming from, and our fears as they manifest in regards to public performance and stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you're saying is in that same vein in terms of how we resolve this.
Yeah.
This inner struggle. All right. Well, let's shift gears here. Let's say we've got a listener who's thinking, oh my gosh, Dr. Pack is my spirit animal. I can't wait to apply to UC and UNCG and study with her. So these questions are sort of for them.
Right.
What are auditions like at UNCG, and what qualities do you like to hear from a player in those auditions?
Well, that's very interesting. A lot of people ask that of college teachers, like, what are you looking for? And they get on the website and they look up what the requirements are. And at UNCG, for me, it's a lot of times they're very surprised that it just says very little, because I recognize that, I'm sure this is the case across the country, but there are a lot of school systems and kids in rural North Carolina where these kids don't have access to teachers. They don't have access to a local orchestra or even a university or anybody within miles and miles and miles. So they might not have ever had lessons. So seeing a bunch of repertoire that they have to learn that they've never heard of, in many cases, is very daunting. And I don't want to thwart that kid, because I was in many ways that kid. I always use myself as the example, because I think the lessons with that trumpet player was to help me get into college, which is weird, but I didn't have anybody else. That was like the local brass teacher. And, it was just interesting how that worked out. And I know that a lot of young people that love music, they idolize their band director. They have talent, but they just haven't had access. So all that is to say, that's a long answer to students merely have to demonstrate proficiency in technical music and lyrical music, really 2 etudes, 2 anythings, 2 excerpts, 2 anythings in contrasting literature. There's no minimum number of minutes. There's no range requirement. I don't ask for scales. I feel like I can learn everything I need to know in about 5 minutes. And then I talk to the students. There's a 15-minute slot, if you will, is me hearing them play for 5 to 6 to 7 minutes and then talking to them, because I'm also interested in the person. I'm always interested in the person, but how is the chemistry of the student? Is this person receptive to teaching? What is their potential? What is their personality? What do I think that they would be a good fit? into the studio. I'm interviewing the whole person, not just the sounds coming out of the bell. So to me, I don't really care what they play. I really don't care what they play. It can be you play whatever you think you sound the best at. I've had kids bring in movie music, lines from Lord of the Rings or something like that, because they love it and they don't know of anything else. I'm like, that's amazing. That's great. What do you want to do with your life? So I talk to them. I talk to them a lot when they're interviewing / auditioning for the studio here. So potential. The one word answer is potential.
Fantastic. You were talking about people coming in and playing movie music. I think one of my very first summer festivals, I had to make a recording and send it in. And I'm trying to remember what I played, but I think it was from Phantom of the Opera. And what is the title?
Music of the Night, or
All I ask of
you?
Is it something like that?
Maybe
we'll cut this part. Anyway, I remember recording that.
Two music professionals that can't remember the name of a hit Broadway.
Sure yeah, exactly. So Priscilla, if you're listening, she moved to New York City to play lead on Phantom of the Opera, and then it closed. Right, it was so depressing. Anyway, she's probably yelling it at me right now. Anyway, so let's assume we've got a student that's already all in. I'm coming to UNCG or whatever school, and they're just looking to get a leg up on the competition. Super driven. What subject or aspect of playing do you feel like your incoming freshmen are most deficient in?
Well, there have to be lots of qualifiers to that question. Have they had lessons? Do they have a private teacher? How long have they been playing? Kind of where are they? Who has their teacher been? Has it been somebody that teaches really good fundamentals? But if I had to give a one-hit answer, it would absolutely be fundamentals. Fundamentals are my bread and butter. It's the soapbox that my office is the soapbox of my life, which is fundamentals. If there was a soapbox on the grocery store that said fundamentals instead of Dove or Irish Spring, that would be my answer. Fundamentals.
Perfect.
I love those analogies.
So our next set of questions here are about student health. I think something that I'm really looking forward to hearing you specifically talk about. How do you help your students manage the inevitable stress and uncertainty they will face while trying to earn a career in music?
Yeah, that is a big question. I always, even with this question, I start with, well, what do you want? What do you want in life? What do you want out of life? What are your 10-year goals? What are your 5-year goals? What do you want to do? What classes do you want next year? What degree? All of let's find out what you want your path to be. And then let's definitely lay out a very intensive curriculum in every way to get you what your dream is. Dreams change. Paths definitely change. Things change. So I always try to open their eyes to as many different possibilities in music as possible. I love even the performance majors. I'll make assignments. I mean, to me, they're assignments. I try to frame it in a project. I call them semester projects. And so Jeff Agrell and I had a conversation about this, because he did something similar to this when I was talking to him about my idea. He's like, oh, I do that too. I call mine Horn Buffet. And I'll because I have music ed majors and performance majors and composition majors, and we have an arts administration degree program here, and we've got pop tech and all these different things where all those kids are required to have lessons. And so I have all of them together in this melting pot where I think they can learn from each other. But say the orchestra driven kid over here doesn't know anything about pop tech or composition. So I have this Horn Buffet, and I'll have an overarching category of music education. Everybody has to pick one project from the music education category, because no matter what you do, you're going to teach somebody something someday in some capacity. Even if you're the technology wizard, you're going to teach somebody how to use some software somewhere in your future, and you're going to need to have some teaching skills. And then I'll come up with a bunch of different ideas they get to choose from. Then I'll have a composition category, and then even the performers have to write a warm up or arrange their favorite pop tune in a horn choir arrangement so that they understand how 8 horns function together. So then we get the orchestra job. They get it. So on and so forth. So I think things like that, I try really hard to come up with interesting new ways to put some diversity, diversify sort of their portfolio, their informal portfolio of experiences here. As far as their insecurities, I hate to keep saying I always come back to myself, but I do, because I had a massive degree change like you. As an undergrad, I wasn't necessarily the best student. I didn't have the best theory grades. I'm going to really embarrass myself, but I got a D in geology. I wasn't an A student. Andrew's celebrating that. I wasn't the straight A, perfect, amazing student. I was your typical college kid that was like, I wanted to be in marching band and just figure it out as I went. So I use myself as the example. Well, if I can make a really fantastic professional career out of horn, anybody can. Like applying for grad school, I didn't know anything about how to apply for a grad school. I might as well have picked schools out of a pot and said, I'm going to apply here because that looks cool. I literally did that. And then that one teacher I mentioned earlier who said, well, you really should look at University of Iowa because they have a strong brass program. I'm like, okay. And I did because he said to, not because I knew anything. So I think that my experience of, I won't say floundering, because I don't think I floundered. I think it was all meant to be, like the stars aligned, like you keep saying. I think that my naivety serves me well now because I try really hard to inform my students of all the possibilities. We travel every minute we can. We go to every conference we can afford. We went to Montreal. We'll go play in high schools. We'll go, we host things. We're very active. I bring in all types of guest artists because I want them to talk to people and to learn about all the different things that all the different ways they can have career in music. Music is everywhere. There's something for everybody. I think you just have to figure it out and find it.
Yeah. It sounds to me like you help your students manage stress and uncertainty by being an example of what managing stress and uncertainty looks like.
Yeah, I
there's
guess
success oftentimes on the other side of stress and uncertainty.
Yeah, and that's the macro answer. I think the micro answer is I have had many students come like unglued in a lesson. I go to Costco and buy boxes and boxes of tissues, right? So on the micro level, I'll say, okay, you know what? Let's have a cup of tea and talk about taking one step at a time. What is it that's really stressing you out? How can I, and this is where I try to help them, because sometimes I wonder if they're getting this anywhere else. I feel like the one-on-one experience with a college professor, this is part of that gravity. The gravity of what I say to the kid sitting across from me who's falling apart has everything to do with what they could potentially decide later that day. So I acknowledge wow, this is really huge. Why don't you take a break and go talk to your friends and come back tomorrow or next week? Or I just say, why don't you just take the day off? That's where I'm thinking, well, gosh, what do I need to change? Do I need to reevaluate how I help the student? But this is another Dougism. He very famously says in his book, he teaches the person, and the horn is the vehicle through which he teaches the person. And my gosh, if I have ever latched onto anything, it's that. So for good or bad, I will try to sit the student down. We have a cup of tea. Students gift me tea. I'm famous for having a kid come in, let's have some tea. They start giving me tea because they know I offer tea. If you're having a bad day, go talk to Dr. Pack and get some tea. And I said, and we'll literally map out okay, let's get you through the week. Today, this is what you're going to do. And we come up with a planner for that day. If they are literally falling apart, let's write down what you're going to do in the next hour. Let's look at what you're going to do in the next hour. if it's not that much of a if it's not that much of a crisis and they just need to talk it out, okay, that's fine. Okay, well, let's get back on track next week. I'll give them all of the university resources. I'll encourage them. I'll say, you know what, text me tomorrow or email me, let me know how you're doing. If it's even more severe, we do have universities are great about providing like walk-in counseling services. And I have taken advantage of those before, and they're amazing. And so far, I'm lucky that it's always been a very positive outcome in those situations. I think that's the nurturing. Like, I try really hard to help their stress, and they see me stressed. And so I also think as a teacher, you have to model crisis really well. Like, just if anybody wants to get better at that, host something. You learn how to handle crises. Infamously, 2014 Southeast, there was an ice storm the morning of the first day of the conference, and our chancellor closed campus at 5 a.m. And the first thing I did was what any normal person would do. I burst into tears.
And then you made yourself a cup of tea.
I freaked out. Yeah, I had a cup of tea and called my director and dean, and they helped us gimp through that first day until the sun came out and melted all the ice. But it was truly and people are, I think, generally really nice. I mean, everyone was really nice. I want my students to see that, like, we're here for you. The university is here to serve. They're not here to serve me. So I try to, in those moments, I'm talking all around the question, but in essence, I try to be very student centered in all of the aspects of the one-on-one relationship. I just don't know how else to be, honestly.
Yeah, you hit on one of the most important elements of why I created this podcast. It's something that I talk about in the How to Choose Your Teacher blog post that's on my website. And it's this idea that I've never spoken to a single private lesson instructor who hasn't had a student breakdown in a lesson. And the reason I share that is because it puts some gravity behind why the teacher that you choose is so important. Is because if you know that will happen, speaking as a parent, if you're thinking about where I'm going to send my child to school and who they're going to study with, if you know that that's going to happen at least once to your child, then it was going to be very important to you who's sitting across from your child at that moment. Or, if you're the student, it's going to be really important who helps you deal with that. So, these types of responses to these questions are, this is imperative that you feel confident in the person that you choose being able to help you through this, because that is in fact what you are electing. Is that person is going to help you see through your best of times and unquestionably your worst of times.
And to be fair, I've had students that come in and say, well, they want you to crack the whip. They want you to be, Doug, if you're out there, another Dougism, he would talk all the time about, teaching is being a chameleon. And so the student that comes in and they're like all business, their horns out, they're warmed up, they're ready, they're like on it, they're like chomping at the bit to start the first thing. I cut the pleasantries, like, okay, let's go. I feel like it's my job to sort of feel it out. So there are students that don't like that sort of, they want nurturing, I guess, I hope, but I think the onus is on the professor, the teacher, to be that chameleon. At least that's how I've always seen it.
Mm-hmm. The next question is in the same vein as the previous. Do you encourage your students to engage in other interests outside of music? Why or why not?
I do. I think it's really important just for human life balance. I think you can have hobbies and fun things to do and play the horn. I mean, there's just so many different ways to look at that. For example, if you're so focused and driven on orchestral music, sometimes I'll try to break through the kid that needs to relax a bit, and I'll say, you know what, let's play some jazz. Let's do some swing or something like that. And that in and of itself can be, uncomfortable and what that student needs. Like on campus, I tell them all, absolutely take advantage of the health fitness center that we have here. I think it's really important. I'm always going on and on and on about looking at yourself as an athlete, and you've got to be physically fit. You've got to be mentally fit. You've got to be nutritionally fit, because all that stuff comes out of the bell. I can't tell you how many times I've had students sit after having not eaten anything, or they'll eat, they'll have a 11 a.m. lesson, and I'll say they sound bad or they're shaky or something. And I'll say, well, what have you had today? What have you eaten? I had a Dr. Pepper 2 hours ago. And I'm like, that's it? And they just like, I just can't figure out why I can't play well. I'm like, geez, so nutrition. I think it's really important to have hobbies, go on hikes. Actually, this is a good story. A number of years ago, I had a runner in my studio, and he wanted to get a running club together. There were several people in other brass studios that just seemed to be sort of a group of runners. And so we have a Facebook group now that's just strictly for horns. I think I'll paraphrase, but it's the UNCG Pack Attack Track or something like that. And it's the Horn Studio Facebook group. And it's been adopted year after year because of this group of kids. And they would get up every morning and go running. And then they would just run around campus and just to run to get some cardio before coming. And I know there's a bunch of Horn students that will go and play basketball and go do sports. And I'm a big kayaker. So I really think it's important to have hobbies. Doesn't mean you have to do it every single day, but I think it's important to get away from music, or even just classical music or the horn, or maybe you need to go kayaking so that you can listen to classical music or what you want, or whatever. I mean, it looks different to everybody. So yeah, I think it's really important.
So important. There's a story that I tell my students, because it was one of the more striking memories of my first few days when I got to Juilliard, where I was, having a tremendous amount of new experiences and a lot of pressure, being at that school, just trying to reckon with what was going on in my life. And as someone that raced mountain bikes in my undergrad, a physical outlet was huge for me, is what got me through my undergrad. And so it was one of the first things I was going to search for. But I'm in the middle of New York City, and Juilliard had a gym. And so I didn't live in the dorms because I was a master's student, but I had to make my way through the dorm to such and such floor to try and figure out, how to get to this gym. And as I'm navigating, okay, there's a sign-in desk. And I asked kindly, I'm trying to get to the gym. And the secretary there said, okay, you just sign it in this book. And so I opened the book, and the page is divided into two halves. The left half is counseling, which Juilliard provided, and the right half was a sign-in for the gym. So I look on the right half and I see, it's like 4:00 in the afternoon, and I'm writing my name down, and I look over at the counseling side and I see that there's like 20 names for counseling. And I'm thinking, nobody came in here to go to the gym. And it stuck with me. It's like, and I don't want to come off as saying that counseling isn't good and that we absolutely shouldn't embrace that element if you need it. But I couldn't help but think in that moment that maybe if more of these people signed in on the right, maybe we wouldn't be signing in on the left. And maybe it's a useless thought experiment, but at that particular moment, with my experience in my life, that was what I thought. And so I tell my students, be proactive in your physical health. It will impact you in ways that you'll never know, which is the best thing about it.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like weightlifting or running, which I've run before many times, when I was, trying to find my outlet. Like, what do I want to do? What do I think is fun? Some people find running 20 miles is fun. I don't personally, but I could certainly spend 2 hours on a lake and paddle around, which is a great physical workout, but it's an even better emotional workout. Like, it's a mental health workout, like in a good way. I just think it's absolutely imperative. And so I always tell the kids that are, on the edge, where I think, you know what, you need to get out of this building and go do something. Go somewhere away from campus if you can, or walk through a neighborhood nearby and sit under a tree. Go to a park. I mean, Greensboro is just renowned for green space. I mean, there's so many parks and lakes here. It's very green, not because of Greensboro. It was, that's a history thing, but there is a lot of green space here.
Yeah, nature therapy is what you
Nature
need. There
therapy.
it is.
Yes,
Stole
that's
that
it.
term from my realtor.
There you
Bought a
go.
house a couple months ago, and that was I learned that that's what I've been looking for in a house.
Yeah, right.
Nature therapy.
Yeah.
All right, last question on the subject of student health. Do you have any thoughts on or experience with playing injuries? And if so, how did you guide your student to recovery?
Yes. I've had a couple of injuries or things. I've had many physical things. The first injury that really centers around horn playing was when I was trying to learn how to play the descant and a high horn piece on descant, and I'm much more naturally suited to the low horn. Like that's a lot more sort of where I sit as a natural player. So I was working on the fingerings and all the high stuff, and I was really focusing on that literature, and I felt a sharp pain shoot up my lip, and that was the first time I'd ever felt a pinched nerve or any sort of spasm in the upper lip, and I freaked out because it got swollen, went through my like, oh my god, all this sort of thing. And I was the student, so I took time off. I even remember then thinking of it as, okay, well, what would an athlete do? I wasn't an athlete at the time, but what would you do in any other part of the body? Well, it's either heat or ice, or you take time off, you massage, you relax, you take care of it, and you kind of baby yourself for a time. So I did that. Now that I know what led to it and what it felt like, I know how to steer clear of that. And so I will use that again myself as an example, like, okay, well, let's be careful, let's watch out for this. I talk about good pain and bad pain with my students. Muscle burn is good pain, pinching and pushing, and severe pain, teeth, that sort of thing. Contact pain is bad pain. Deep muscle burn pain is good pain, loosely speaking, generally speaking. The other thing that I have to navigate is scoliosis and bursitis and shoulder and back pain that I myself have. So I'm very conscious of teaching students, posture and mostly just bodily care. Because I think when you have problems, I've gotten in hot water over this before, Andrew, but I think that this is just me. When you have to navigate a lot of problems, it helps you teach better because you have empathy. And even if you don't experience the same thing as your student, you, in generalities, can speak to bodily care, how to come back from things. Being a woman who's had two very difficult C-sections and then two other abdominal surgeries, I've gotten really good at getting back in shape after. I mean, those weren't injuries. They were all because of big babies. But you
Those
can't.
are substantial
They're
surgeries.
they're substantial surgeries. So you lose abdominal tone. You have wounds. You literally can't play when you're recovering from something like that for a certain amount of time. So I've gotten really good at how to come back from taking time off, no matter what the injury is. Listening to the body, really paying attention to symptoms and signs that you need to take a break, and just coaching students through like wisdom teeth. I remember that. I also had braces as a player, so I know how to help kids get in and out of braces and wisdom teeth. I had 5 wisdom teeth, so I went through that twice where I had to come back. I broke a tooth once, had to deal with that. I can help students with broken teeth. So all that is to say, yes, even if the injury doesn't look like the student's, I feel really comfortable helping a student get through whatever the thing is, because I've done it so many times. And just showing like, look, I was able to play a solo with a band, a hard solo with a band last year after all that, like, coming out on the other side and still being able to perform. They see, oh, okay, I can do this. I can do this too.
Yeah, when we were talking a little bit before the episode, you were talking about how Jen Montone had become one of your big heroes. For those that don't
Yes.
know her backstory, she got in a car crash and had a jaw injury, and basically had to relearn how to play the horn almost purely from scratch. And if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that was months, not years, months before her Philadelphia orchestra. audition.
That's
And she
amazing.
retrained her way back to success, winning that job where she is now. And yeah, stuff like that blows my mind.
I have to tell you, that's one of the reasons she's a horn hero, because I heard her play. I don't know if it was her first performance. I can't speak to that, but it was the first, well, it was the first time I had ever heard her play. And it also happened to be, I believe it was IHS in Bloomington. And she came out and she said, just disclaimer, I was in an accident. So I'm not going to play everything where it was written, and it was I'll never forget it, Hindemith E flat alto horn sonata, which is a high horn because it's written for the E flat alto horn, which is a completely different instrument. But horn players will often play that on the horn because it's such a great piece. And she played it. And I remember I was sitting with a friend. And we're like, oh yeah, she's going to take those high notes down. We'll know what to listen for. And I was shocked and stunned and amazed that in fact, no, that's not what she did. She had to take the low notes up because her jaw, I guess her oral cavity was still sore or something like that. And she was just a goddess. I mean, she was just a goddess. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. She became a horn hero in that moment. That was the first time I'd heard her play live. And that was it for me. For her. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Pack, I could talk to you all day. We're going to have to wrap this up at some point. So I have a couple closing questions for you. If every student could only learn one thing from you, what would you want it to be?
I would want them to learn and to know you have to be really hungry for what you want. You just have to want it so bad and really hungry because it's a competitive world. And there's hundreds of other horn players that are brilliant, and there's always going to be somebody better than you. Always. Everyone. That applies to every person. There's always going to be somebody who can do what you can't. But don't let that deter you and your hunger and your drive to work really hard. And part 2 is be somebody that people want to work with. Be a kind human. Mind your manners. Be friendly. Everybody's has gone through something similar. Like everybody's got a story. Just be a good person. Be a good person. Be humble and hungry.
Great advice. To that first point about being hungry, I remember I approached Jeff Nelson at that exact same Southeast Horn workshop that I met you at when he was a featured artist. And I had a very prepared question for him. I said, I want to know, what was it that you did specifically in my stage of learning, when you were a freshman in college, that you think made the biggest difference in terms of where you are in your career? And he thought about it for a while, and he said, I remember buying a pack of sticky notes, and I pulled a whole bunch of them out and I stuck them all over my apartment. And on every single one of them, I wrote basically the same message. And the message that he wrote was, how bad do you want it? That way, when I would open my eyes and I could look up at the ceiling, and the first thing I would see is, how bad do I want it? And then I wouldn't roll over.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'd get up and I go wash my face, and I know I'd be tired there. And so there's the sticky note on the mirror. How bad, do you want it? And it would be every little step of the way, just encouraging himself.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah, that was, I thought, very, very sound advice, which I definitely embraced. Last question. Is there anything you typically say to those graduating from your studio before they leave?
I don't wait until the very end to say anything. I think I say things along the way all the time. And I think it's very similar to the answer I just gave. I try to encourage them to be hungry along the way. But I think the biggest piece of advice that I give actually students walking in, I always give this in the first studio meeting, and it's the age-old sort of piece of advice. You only get one chance to make a first impression. And I think that when they're leaving here, I encourage and hope, and I say it enough, to where they have 4 years to really get it right. So that with them, when they walk out as a senior, they have become somebody that other people want to be around and want to hire as a grad student or for a gig or for, because your playing will only get you so far. it might get you the job, but you not necessarily will keep the job if you're not a nice person and somebody that people want to be around and to work with and to hire. So I would say that the last piece of advice, well, the last piece of advice when they're literally leaving is go find your next horn teacher. Go take lessons. Never stop learning. Go take lessons. Go take some more lessons.
I know I said that was the last question, but there is one more. In recent months, our industry has been going through a significant cultural self-examination brought on primarily, but not exclusively, by Kara Kaiser's story about what happened to her while she was in the New York Philharmonic. As a woman, what do you feel is the current cultural state of the horn world? Are we better off now than we were in the past? And what, in your opinion, can be done to make our industry safer for future generations?
That's a big question. I think the curtain has been pulled back, and it's long overdue. I feel nothing but gratitude and humility for the people, the generation, and all the people that have brought light and sort of cast light on to the things that have happened. I have so much respect and appreciation for all of the new people and more people that are normalizing or bringing light to things that have been normalized that shouldn't have been. So just bringing light to it. I hate saying like exposed or something like that. I just think that some things that have been happening for a long time are now part of a conversation that's long overdue. And it all comes to a shock to us, but it shouldn't, because I also, as a woman who has been, a musician, and in the 80s, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, wrestling with knowing that this stuff was out there in my own little world all along, and knowing reputations and things were happening, but not that I was complacent, but I was naive and quote unquote, it's just the way it is kind of mentality. So whenever somebody did something and behaved badly, I mean, I definitely had some experiences like that. Nothing as horrific and severe as many, many, many other people. I count myself lucky. But, back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, we laughed it off in milder examples of that. But it's still something that I'm really glad is coming to light. I think that transparency is always the right way to go. If things that stay in the shadows, behind the curtain, if you will, they are so because they're wrong. And there must be a reason that there isn't as much transparency. For the future and the current things that seem to be happening from where I sit, I hear about more really big professional auditions being blind all the way up until the end. You can probably speak to that much better than me, but having a conversation with Tanner and how that audition was blind all the way to the very, very end really was great. I really was happy for him that was his experience through the process. And I hear that seems to be being embraced a lot more, because it has to be and it should be. I count myself very lucky that my experiences over the years have largely been healthy in my own little world, because I feel like it's such a big world and these changes are so huge. I have the privilege of being in a position where I've always been very lucky, and it's always been a healthy environment. But I am speaking out more. I have had some occasions where I've said, no, this isn't right, in my own way, in my own little way, because I feel like the things that happened and sort of brought this conversation to the forefront, especially in the horn world, are so huge and powerful. And I think that we all have a responsibility to support those people that went through that in any way that we can. So I mean, it's such a hard topic. The best way that I can sort of tackle those are through the conversations with my students, so that the males and the females know what the expectations should be. I've always modeled that really, really, I really put high priority on the relationship that I have with my students and how that should be the most serious professional relationship while still being a nurturing person. And I think everybody can be that way. I think we're having a lot of growing pains right now.
Yeah, agreed. It is a tough subject to talk about. And I think the best thing that we can do at this phase is talk about it. So I appreciate you answering that question. So let's say that there's a student that's absolutely sold on coming to UNCG. What would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, email, of course. UNCG has all the normal contact information that every other university has, where you can go to the brass page and find all the brass faculty and our emails. We have the main School of Music phone number. We don't have office phones anymore. I guess those have now become dinosaurs. So email is probably best. The UNCG Horn Studio is on social media. We have a Horn Studio page, a public outward-facing Horn Studio page. I have my students run our Instagram account, so you can always follow that and message us through there. I have my own Facebook page. I know that young people say Facebook is for old people, and I have to arm twist them into doing that when they get to college. So email's probably best, or leaving a message on our school phone. I mean, email, I guess, is the primary. I usually give out my cell phone to my studio just so that we can all get a hold of each other quickly. But honestly, Messenger and internet supported messaging is better, because we don't always have cell service, and I can't always get cell messages. So the standard typical ways are the best. Even better, come to UNCG and visit the beautiful campus.
There you have it. Dr. Pack, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank
My
you
pleasure.
so much for sharing your wisdom and intellect and kindness.
My pleasure. It's been my honor. And thank you so much for having me. It's always fun to talk to you, Andrew.
Thanks for listening. All right.
Oh my gosh. I didn't read anything that I wrote down. I wrote that.